What's up, YouTube? In this video, I'm talking about the Boston Celtics offseason, and we'll just talk a little bit about what the Eastern Conference champions can do to improve their roster and what to expect as we enter July and free agency being only just a couple days away. So let's just jump right into it. Feel free to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment what you think the Celtics might want to do, and let's just jump right into it here. All right, so let's throw this up. So first, let's talk about the Boston Celtics and kind of what they're looking at as far as their free agents go. So up front, nothing crazy as far as unrestricted or restricted free agents. Guys who didn't really get time during the playoffs or really during the regular season at all. So you have Luke Cornett, unrestricted, and then two restricted free agents in Broderick Thomas and Matt Ryan. Team options, they have Juwan Morgan and Sam Hauser that they'll make decisions on. And so that's, in a nutshell, their free agents right there. But they do have some non-guaranteed deals with some guys. Specifically, I want to focus on Al Horford. I don't think this will happen, but the Celtics do have the ability to decrease their payroll a little bit by deciding to not guarantee the Al Horford contract, where he would be reduced. His contract would then be reduced from 27 million or 26.5 million next year, and it could be reduced down to 14.5. So saving about 12 million right there. And again, it doesn't really help them with cap space. I think that they would do this if they lost in the first round or something to the Nets, and then they didn't think Horford looked good in that series or anything like that. So ultimately, they'll probably guarantee that contract for next season. But let's talk about the last column here. Because as it pertains to the Celtics, this is important for them. So they already extended Grant Williams. Grant Williams got an extension he's making next season. He'll be making a little bit more money at $4 million, but then he'll be extended, and at that point he can be, a part of the Celtics team. As he played pretty solid in the finals during their playoff run, and is a good role player for this team. The biggest thing also is going to be Al Horford. This is kind of where their offseason kind of rotates because they can't really afford any other new players to the team. They have their core. Unless they want to trade Jaylen Brown or Marcus Smart, which we'll get to in a minute, then there might be some moves that they could potentially make, but they can't sign anybody. So free agency-wise, they're kind of out on that. But they do need to decide on Al Horford if they want to keep him long term. So we need to remember Horford's been in the league for next season will be 16 years. So a lot of miles on him, obviously up there in age. Played really solid, I think, during the year and was a big part of the reason why their defense was really good. But I just think that you got to be cautious with this kind of thing. He loves Boston, obviously goes back to Boston after being there in his first run with them and thrives, goes to the finals. And so Horford was put in a good position. Again, age is an issue. You wonder if next year if he really kind of takes a dip, and you want to be able to be prepared to if you're going to extend him, then you need to be able to be cautious with the number that you're giving him. So that's pretty much that. Other things really quickly I wanted to talk about here for the Celtics. This video will be relatively short as most of these videos, especially for teams that can't do much in the offseason. But I do want to talk about potential trades this team could make. Just analyzing and looking over their cap sheet, they have the ability to move off of Grant Williams. They could also move off of Al Horford and Daniel Tice. So those are three names I could see that are kind of obvious trade candidates. I don't think as a Celtics fan you should feel too tied to any of those three players. They're great in their own right, but if you can upgrade, you do it. And these are kind of more of your expendable players. Didn't throw Marcus Smart into here. He just won the Defensive Player of the Year award. And I think that you just really need something on this team that is more offensively driven. I think defensively we know what they are. They're great on defense. But I think they need some guy who can kind of lead the offense a little bit, preferably a point guard. Now, Smart was good last year. I don't think he's your traditional point guard. So because of that, I do feel like this is a team that you kind of sit here and you say, okay, we need to get a better point guard in here so we can be able to make more moves for the future and become a better team, be able to get into our offense better, and all the above. Good enough point guard, I think, to start, but I think that's just kind of what's missing from their offense is sometimes it's just too much Jaylen Brown and Tatum not really taking the greatest of shots. And, if the role players aren't hitting their shots, then it's kind of hard. So you need a point guard to, I feel like, really help them get into their offense. So an offensive point guard, that's kind of their need, in my personal opinion. Drafted players, they drafted J.D. Davison out of Alabama. So I don't know if he'll make much of an impact. We'll see him in the Summer League and the G League this upcoming year, see what he can develop into. A guy who I kind of want them to play a little bit more is Peyton Pritchard. I think he's really solid, got some finals minutes. I know he really shot the ball poorly during the last part of that series, but I think he's a dude that is young. He's an older prospect, came out of Oregon after playing, I believe, for 4 years. And I think he's good. Showed really good skills and ability in last year's Summer League. Got some minutes this year. And I think that giving him a little bit more time to kind of develop. His ceiling's not high, but I think his floor is pretty high. I think TJ McConnell-esque is kind of a guy who I see, a guy who's a hustler, plays defense, can hit some shots. But nobody that you're going to say, this is our starting point guard of the future, right? So I think he's a solid contributor to the team. I think he should play a little bit more, as he did in the playoffs. Okay, final notes here that I want to talk about. I think that this team, again, likely to keep Horford, and then kind of figure out what his contract looks like when he's 35 plus years old. So that's going to be interesting to see. What would his trade value be? Because a lot of people really saw Horford be able to play out in the perimeter as a big man, and obviously he provides floor spacing as being a three-point shooter. He also can play on the perimeter to a degree against some on the defensive end of the floor. But I do think that also with Horford, like, there are teams out there that are like, man, if we had Al Horford, maybe we would be a lot better. And so are teams still high on him? Do teams get scared off by his age? Like, what is his trade value exactly? Because I fully expect this team to guarantee his deal and that he'll be on the team next year. I just think as a front office, you should at least look into the option of potentially moving him just because of the money. But again, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but it's a thought and an idea. Extending Grant Williams was another point, but I do want to talk about 4 names that I've heard about that the Celtics are interested in. How attainable or how how this happens, I don't really know. But the 4 names I've heard are Otto Porter, Danilo Gallinari, TJ Warren, and Gary Harris. So these are 4 dudes I think that could contribute to the Celtics. They've been rumored a little bit, but ultimately the Celtics are going to look to be really the same team next year. Be a great defense, hopefully get a little bit healthy with some guys who were kind of in and out of the lineup during the playoffs, and really go after it next year. I think Ime Udoka played a really, really good finals, and I think just the better team won in the Warriors. But I think he's an up-and-coming coach. He's kind of already arrived, and I think the Celtics team will be a home court advantage team next year for sure. So we'll see how the rest of the East kind of figures out their roster. Pessimistically, this is a team that also took 7 games to beat the Bucks, and if there's a healthy Chris Middleton, do they beat them? They went to Game 7 against I think a not as good Miami team as they were. So we'll see exactly what the Celtics are this year, but ultimately this is how they look in the offseason. Again, not much that they can do in free agency. Can they make a trade? Probably not. This team's most likely going to stay the same next season. So again, more videos coming out like this. Feel free to check out all the other 29 teams that we're doing, and we'll go from there. So have a good one.